All right, C2, recommendation of adoption of the West Side Master Plan, and we have Parks Director Polly with us. Go ahead, Jamie.
Thank you. I am here back tonight. So I presented this plan to the Park Commission and the ERC a few months ago. And at that last Environmental Resources Committee meeting, the committee asked me to go, there were some few questions about some of the design of the West Side Master Plan, but also just some confirmations of the user groups and the kind of stakeholders of Marathon Park, meaning Fair Board, UWSP, and our other user groups. So I did take that back, and then also what came out of that was the presentation to the full county board as an informational item of the West Side Master Plan, which we did. So I'm not going to go through the entire presentation for you all again, since you have all seen it already twice, and a few of you more than that, with Rick being on a couple of my other committees. Might have it memorized by now. But I wanted to bring this back. So the plan in front of you is not changed from the plan that you saw previously. There is a little bit of clarification in a few of the items, in that if you see in the middle of that diagram, number 24 would be that proposed midway of the fair. On our previous plan, I believe I had in the packet, because I had accidentally grabbed the wrong plan. This is the correct plan. We didn't have that gravel pathway in the middle. After the ERC meeting, I did meet again with the Fair Board president, as well as I know Rick has had some conversation with his fellow Fair Board members as well regarding this plan, to just get the idea. I'm not going to say the Fair Board is 100% behind this plan, because it's changed. The fair has been set up the same way for decades and decades, maybe 100 years, with a little bit of change. But the changes that we're proposing in the long-term viability of the park, with the traffic calming, the more park-like feel, the added trees, the grass, and kind of rotating some of the buildings, I do believe the Fair Board feels that they can make this work. They know that they will be at the table when we actually come to design this plan, because as we talked about, this is a long-term plan. This is the county board's plan. This is not my plan. It's not my department's plan. We are working to bring out the vision of what this park could be, but it really ultimately has to be your plan as the county board supervisors for what you see Marathon Park and their surrounding areas to be, based on current conditions and stuff like that. So we did talk with the Fair Board. There's going to be some changes of how things are. One big thing that I got out of our conversation was the exhibition building has always been the staple of the fair. It's the center building of the fair. It's the icon that they have on all of their publications. Is we still need to work and have that exhibition building be that center of the fair, however we design these roads and these parking lots when the final design gets to be at that point. So that's the focus. Vendors would be set around that. We would tie in, as I mentioned, this all ties in so that the livestock is tied in with the grandstand and its ease of movement. We also have to consider, when we do the final design of the roads and the midway, is how we get the large trucks in to set up the fair equipment and the vendors and all of that stuff. So all of that would be part of that. When I presented to the county board, Dr. Thomas from the UWSP was at that meeting, ready to answer any questions that the county board might have. There wasn't any questions for her, but the UWSP has been at the table from day one as a partner in this study. That's one of the driving factors of this master plan, was what do we do with that dormitory? They do not need it anymore. These are county-owned facilities, so that was a driving part of it. The other driving part of this master plan, so not necessarily park wasn't the driving part of this master plan. It was the UWSP dormitory, and then it was also West Street. And if the highway department moved, well, how was that going to be redeveloped? So when we entered into this whole process a year ago, it was under the direction of the infrastructure committee that the highway department and the parks department would be moving out of this site, and that we would redevelop this site. So that those two factors are what stemmed it, and then the park being the center focus of kind of all of it gets tied into that and was part of that original master plan. So we do know, as with any plan, this is a concept, even since we have done it and worked on it over and over. right now, the land that the highway department was really looking at is no longer available. So the idea of the highway department moving off of that corner anytime soon is not realistic because there's no site for them to go. So that's one part of this plan. You know, when they move, how is that going to be redeveloped? This is a vision. It's probably going to change. We also know that number 38, which on our other plan that we have is grayed out because that's the one property that the city doesn't, or the county does not own. But we know that the city is looking at that for a public works department. They are going ahead with a feasibility study of how their public works department could fit on that property and potentially purchase that property. Right now, they don't know if the landowner is willing to even sell, but they're still going ahead with the possibility of using that site. So the Ironworks property, which is number 38 on that plan, isn't county owned and may never be county owned, may never be sold, may never be redeveloped. But we're not banking on that. That property does not change this overall plan. The idea of what the county has to look at is, you know, one of the ice arena, in that whether this plan is adopted or not, the county needs to look at the ice arena, the feasibility, the long-term viability of the ice arena, what we do with that building. There is thousands and thousands of dollars worth of repair needed. It's running on a 50-plus-year-old system that we are making work every day, but it's not feasibly long-term. So what does that look like? And, you know, the ironworks, or not the ironworks, Site 31 on this plan is currently the cold storage building. We know that that has to come down. The county board approved the raising of that building because of the environmental factors of it and the necessity of getting that removed. That site will become vacant if emergency management and the coroner's office can be relocated. That could be the site where the ice arena goes first, being that it's going to be a vacant property versus the highway department. So all of its moving pieces, ultimately this is a plan, like I talked about at the county board. That's a vision of what this area could be. Every detail of it still needs to have its specific design to it. There will be stakeholders involved in those conversations, especially the fair. If we ever get to the point where the pickleball courts are able to be moved out of the park, that's the only way where that midway could be moved. Right now, the pickleball courts are in the smack dab area. We're committed to those courts. We're not moving them at the moment. So, but there are areas within this plan that in the near future we could move forward with, such as the Marathon Junction. The Marathon Junction is also a building that should come down because the amount to repair it is probably higher than it would be just to rebuild it. There's a lot of better uses for it. It does not make the county any money. It's an enterprise fund that the county actually subsidizes. And the only real use for it right now is the train and the small concession we run out of there. So that needs to be looked at, of the viability of that space. The splash pad has reached its useful life, so it does need to be replaced, repaired, or gone away with. But as I showed also in my presentation to the county board, is that since the beginning of time, as far as we know, with Marathon Park, there has been a water feature in that area, whether it's been a pond, a splash pad, a wading pool, it can be anything. And then we have some playground replacements that we have always had planned within our park because our playgrounds have also reached their useful life. So, and then Eastgate Hall is another one that could be addressed right away. It's our most heavily used building in the county by large events. And there are some infrastructure needs for it that needs air conditioning. It does not have that currently. There's some acoustic issues with it in order to really make large events good for that facility. It's got some flooring needs for it. The footprint of that building is not estimated to change or not looked at to change anything. It would be more of some renovations inside and some aesthetics to the building to make it more desirable for weddings or large events like that. But it is a revenue source for the county, heavily used at this time. So that's kind of the master plan. It's the same master plan that was presented to you. We had said to the county board and at this meeting for any county board supervisors that had questions or comments to send them to me or Chair Longenhan, and I not sure if Chair Longenau has received any, but he can comment on those. As far as what I've received, I did receive a comment from Supervisor Ritter about just keeping in mind the safety concerns related to horse and the midway and the lights. So that is something, as it is designed on this, is very similar to how it currently is, of where the midway is and the horse arena is. So that's something to talk with the horse users of if that gets changed. Supervisor Zhang sent me some notes about the desired upgrades to Eastgate Hall. They use it quite often for the Hmong American Center, for Hmong family get-togethers, for parties. It's a very great facility for large gatherings. His comments were to enlarge the kitchen for cooking, upgrade the acoustics, and address any public or plumbing issues when we have large crowds. So that was his comments. And then Supervisor Lemmer sent in some questions about will we look at the ROI when we're looking at these different amenities? And that is a yes, as we look at each phase. Each phase will come through the CIP process because most of the upgrades to this park meet that CIP request. So it's going to come through the Park Commission, the ERC, the HR Finance Committee, and ultimately Counter Board when you do the budget. And all of that information will be included with that. She asked who manages the Marathon Junction, which is our department, and if there was any interest in sponsorships moving forward. And we have not gotten to that point yet because we don't have any specific project to ask for. But a lot of these upgrades will most likely, especially the ice arena, require public-private partnerships to make successful. So that is what I've received. I don't know, Chair Longenau, if you have received any other comments or questions?
As far as email, just to triple check, I wanted to wait until today to see if I would get any, and I searched West Side, and the only thing that I've gotten in the past 2 months was an email from you on Thursday about the West Side Master Plan.
About questions.
I think the only other thing, if we're including everything, I think Supervisor or Vice Chair Drabeck might have called me once and asked when it was coming back on the agenda again. So there you go. That's everything.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I haven't had anything else, so, and you reviewed all of your comments and questions that you'd received, so, yeah.
Mr.
Supervisor Seefeld?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did review some of this with a couple of the members of the Fair Board, which I am a member of, and seeing that the Midway with having this gravel road going through and underneath on both sides is going to be presented as a drained really well if we do have a major rain during the fair. It's not artificial grass, but it is compacted underneath, is from what I understand, and it will drain well. So I'm not saying that the Fair Board is completely in line with this, but this does mean that it does look better for, approval for the Fair Board. And to move our concessions, as you look at P7, it's a parking lot. That's where, one or two major concessionaires are at. And when the time does come for this, they will probably request to move closer to the Midway. Now, there is room on both sides of the Midway, that road that goes through between 24 and 25, to put concessionaires in and on the north side. Now, we always did run concessionaires down by, let's see, by the cattle barns and through there. There will still be room for concessions to go through there. But it is going to take a little bit away from the concessions because the midway is getting moved. But those concessions that are down on this end basically serves a lot of the junior fair. So getting at this again, I think the plan is doable for the fair, but like I said, it's not 100%, backed by the fair yet, but it is getting closer, and we're definitely working together to get this done. And as a plan looks right now, I would recommend to go ahead with this.
I will also add, I did take this back to the Park Commission this afternoon, and they once again just confirmed their motion to forward this on to the ERC.
Supervisor Draybeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, no, it's been a while since I've been here, but on the Midway, don't they have like tents and stuff? They set up these displays and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, they have their games and stuff all along.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything where they have to poke like long steel things into the ground to hold it in place like they would with a tent? Because
Yep,
how
I
would you
think they
do
do
that
some
in that?
staking.
Oh, it's that?
I think they do some staking.
Okay, but if there's blacktop there, how do you do that?
There isn't any blacktop where the Midway would go.
There's not? Okay. That's the other problem I have with this is my iPad is not near big enough. Because I have a very
I'm
hard
sorry.
time putting this perspective. And then when I do it, I pull it out, the number, the letters and stuff change then, and they're hard to read. So.
Yeah.
And the highway department,
Maybe this.
that would be there's a plan B if the highway department did not leave then? Is what I'm hearing? Because, in some ways sometimes we get these things and they say, okay, you have, this is one plan, okay, this is option 2 plan, this is option 3 plan, and I'm only seeing option 1 here.
Yep.
If you follow what I'm saying.
Yeah, so typically when we do a master plan like this, it's a one plan, master vision, because things are going to continually to change. So even if we had an option 2 at this point, it's going to change tomorrow. So from what I was saying is, from this plan, it's kind of lays out, I think it lays out the bones of what we need to consider as a county, working towards, the layout of the park to make it safer, to work towards more green space and trees, to work towards redevelopment of whatever county-owned properties are on West Street, whether that is where we put a building or where we put athletic fields. Through this study, that area was looked at as to whether commercial, industrial, or housing should go there. And those were all ruled out in that study for one reason or another. So this is going to change. From what like I said, if highway doesn't move, that site right next to it that the county also owns where that cold storage building is going to be vacant when that cold storage building comes down. If it becomes time where if the county wants to move forward with that ice arena or with other fields, that could be a site for it. So it flip-flops those two sites. So it's taking that whole vision of the area and then working it into whatever land or opportunities become available. Because if West Street never becomes available, there isn't much we can do in the park to change anything. Pickleball courts aren't leaving. Ice arena doesn't have anywhere to go at this moment. The roads then wouldn't be changing. There's a couple things, like I mentioned earlier, that we still could move forward with, mainly the junction in that northeast corner and Eastgate Hall. But there are things that are contingent upon other things. So there could be a lot of different options. And I think that's where we use the plan as the skeleton of it, of what we would like to see. And then we look at each opportunity as it presents itself and what our priorities are. So that's where I know, highway, if we find a site tomorrow and the county board moves on that quicker than as it is at this moment, then we can be back to this design. But I think we have to keep that mind open of how we might accomplish some of these items, but they might just be in different spots. I know ultimately Highway wants to move off of West Street, just space and proximity and traffic and that kind of thing.
Supervisor Stravinsky's got a question. I got one. Under 2, like in the top left of the, well, 3/4 of the way across in the left part of the map, under 2, I don't know if it's because I didn't see in the matrix, but what is that practice area meant for? You see that with like I know there's a bunch of yellow arrows on that side, but like.
Oh, the yellow arrows that are on the west side of the park?
Well, to the left of the grandstand, do you see that label? It says practice area right above P3. What is that?
Yes, that would be if we did put disc golf through the woods, that would be a practice basket.
Got it. Okay, Supervisor Stravinsky.
So this is a two-part. We keep coming back to the current ice arena as being an area of need. It's not maybe urgent, but it's going to become urgent at some unknown time in the not distant future. So I guess 2 thoughts. Do we have a 10,000-foot plan for what the replacement building would look like? And do we have a plan B for, okay, we have no place to put a new building. What do we do to refurbish the existing building?
Mm-hmm. Yes, to answer your questions, so I have a general idea of what a new facility would look like, but I do have on my work plan for 2023 to, well, it would be a 2024 project, but a work plan to bring forward to the county board or to get the user groups together to actually then do a feasibility study for the ice arena. I think that's a necessity before we would move forward with one, because we need to get the Cyclones, we need to get the school districts, we need to get youth hockey, our figure skating groups, even the public who uses it for open skate. We need to get everybody at the table to really decide what it is that they're going to commit to as far as usage, so we can think of revenue and expenses, but we also need to talk about space. How many locker rooms is it going to need? Is 2 sheets exactly what we need? Are we going to have ice in 1 sheet all year round? 2 sheets all year round? Those are discussions that we have to get that kind of idea of what that building's really going to cost. Or can it be more basic? I think those are the discussions we have to have with those user groups. At a really high level, we need exactly what we have now and a little bit more seating and a bigger lobby. So that's what we know for sure that we need based on the usage of our current facility. And we do have demand for 1 sheet to be year-round ice all year. And we need a roof that doesn't leak and a lot of that stuff. But that's the general idea of what the ice arena is. As far as if we don't have a space to put it, and what we can do. Every year we're looking at the maintenance of that building, putting in our plan. We're keeping it running as best as we can. It's just how much money do we put into it? And then I have started conversations with our school district to determine, is there other land available within the city where this could be put? There's a potential proposal for downtown, whereas land that a facility could be put. So we're starting those discussions, but we don't have anything set yet.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're potentially faced with a catastrophic failure, and we're not going to have a plan to move ahead and and short circuit that failure. What I think I would urge is a more detailed plan that comes back more quickly with, here's plan A. This is the gold plan. This is 2 sheets, everything anybody would want. Here's kind of a middle road of the plan. Here's the plan and the dollars that refurbishes the existing building and keeps it up and running for 10 years. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know how fast we're going to be able to move the highway department. And there'd be resistance in trying to do both of those projects within the same 2 or 3 years, I would think.
Yes, definitely. And that would be what that feasibility plan would come about, yes. And one thing we have to consider, because we've talked about whether we can just rebuild it in its current location, but I do have experience building an ice arena from my previous position in Minnesota, and we built it extremely fast for construction standards, breaking ground on April 1st and dropping the puck on December 15th. That's pretty unlikely. I mean, we had a very good construction company and construction administrator, but that is where people rely, there's a lot of people that rely on that ice, and there isn't another place for them to go other than outdoors. So we have to minimize, in my experience in Minnesota, I had a different sheet I had them working on until the new one was open. We don't have that luxury here. So we have to make sure that our ice arena, it doesn't close down until the end of March, and we open it already in September. So that's a extremely short construction season if we were to just redo it where it is, but there may be options for redoing the building or what that might cost us as far as insulating and new roof and all that stuff we would put together as well.
Any other questions, comments for the director? Okay. Well, I guess my last comment will be, of course, and I think the department has a strong history of working with community groups to ultimately arrive at the best possible outcome. So, and I trust that staff, of course, will continue those relationships, and that staff will also understand that with the adoption of such a plan, that it's really ultimately the responsibility of the organization to plan for, well, this potential list of projects, which is substantial. And ultimately, it's the role of us as policymakers to provide oversight during that process as far as what's best for our constituents. So I can support this plan, given the work that's been done since those concerns have been raised. And I would be willing to offer my support at the county board, obviously. So.
Thank you.
Anything else from the committee? Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that if we approve this, this is not written in blood. It goes, let this on the map. It's adjustable. Am I correct?
It's definitely
I just want to make
adjustable.
sure that that's the way it is.
Yep.
And that's a good point, because even to Supervisor Strafinski's point about if one of these projects were to come up, there would have to be a study, right?
Yes.
In order for it to even be, well, not to be too intuitive, but feasible, right?
Right. I guess what I'm struggling with is we're talking, right now we're at what I would consider to be a 100,000-foot level. We know we have issues that we are going to have to address and address urgently. We just don't know when. And that means, and we don't have those plans. And sometimes those plans take months or years to put together.
Yes.
If you're going to build I'll make up a number out of thin air, a $10 million ice arena, and I have no idea if that's a good number or a bad number. That's not something you plan in 6 weeks.
No, I agree.
So I'm struggling with the notion that we have this 100,000 foot vision, but we know we have needs inside of that vision that are rapidly approaching that we don't really have plans for. We don't even have aspirational plans for. We just have visions.
So I'm just going to, I'll let Director Polly talk, but I was just going to add, if the exhibition building falls down tomorrow, Jamie's probably going to talk to Lori at some point, and then Lori's probably going to talk to me at some point. I'm probably going to hear about it. Like
You'll probably hear about it before me, but yeah.
I guess that's where, to my earlier comment, you're going to have to trust staff to manage this stuff to the point where, yeah, if it's going to fall down or something's failing, that they're going to show up and they're going to ask about it, or they're going to inform us about it so that we can make decisions. But
Yep.
I don't know if you had anything else to add, Director.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And I want to say, Supervisor Strafinski, you're exactly right. This is a 1,000-foot level. This is the vision that that I'm asking the county board to set as far as, is this what you envision? Because if you can see the potential of like a new ice arena somewhere, whether it's in the highway location, whether it's next door, whether it's in the current location of that ice arena, and you support that issue, this plan then gives me the direction of, and working with the Park Commission on how to prioritize these projects. And that is one that's got to rise to the priority. But if the county board were to say, nope, we want Marathon Park to be exactly as it is and make everything run just how it is, or we're not going to support an ice arena anymore, well, that's a different vision, and it gives me a different set of direction to work from, where I'd have to work with our community partners to say, once this fails, you're on your own, you got to figure it out, type of a thing. So by approving this plan, it gives me that vision to start working on those individual priorities, and we'll definitely, as a park commission, prioritize those, bring them back, work them into our CIP process, work with our stakeholders to really start getting some movement on what the necessities are.
And really, in my opinion, that's a better vision than I think I've heard before with this plan, because really what I see then with this vision is that you are working with all the community partners for them all to exist in this park, which I think that's ultimately the vision that I want to see with this park.
Yes.
But, okay. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay. What is the pleasure of this committee? Supervisor Shavinsky.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the West Side Master Plan and move it forward to the board.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Seatbelt. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We have 6, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. Department updates, conservation planning, zoning, park rec, and forestry, solid waste. Brief update on proposed state legislation related to state salt pollution prevention, de-icer, applicator certification, and liability protection.
Okay, I will keep it brief.
Cool.
We do have Kevin Lang from Highways and Jeff Pritchard from CPZ Planning on the phone in case you do, or on the WebEx in case you do want to ask any questions. But they have brought forth that in the state legislature there's a senator and a representative who are looking for co-sponsorship to bring a bill forward this year that would allow offer limited liability to de-icing applicators who use certain best management practices as it relates to using salt in icing areas. This would be a voluntary pathway that they would be proposing through the legislature. So it just gives people that opportunity to use less salt if they want to go that route and get those certifications, and give them limited liability if they do that. This is something that some other states such as New Hampshire, Colorado, Minnesota, Illinois have pursued to try and get their salt usage down. This would be something we wanted to make the ERC aware of, because in the past, if this did come to the floor, you may want to consider a resolution supporting it. And it would support our strategic plan 6.3 strategy D is where we would see the alignment with the ERC. Jeff or Kevin, I'll give it to you for a minute there just to add the big points that I missed. But I think right now we're just trying to make the ERC aware that this might be coming back to you in the future, that it could be introduced at the legislature this year.
Thank you. This is Jeff Pritchard here. The only thing I'd like to add is that this particular proposed piece of legislation has been developed in consultation with DNR Saltwise, who actually put on the Salt Awareness Week last week, and organizations or coalitions across the state similar to the North Central Wisconsin Stormwater Coalition Group and other watershed groups. It is a state issue in terms of chlorides becoming a water quality issue throughout the state. And I think that the director summed it up nicely, so I will terminate my presentation in the interest of time.
Kevin, did you want to add anything else from the Highways Department?
No, we're just here if somebody had some questions.
Any questions?
Oh, well, one additional thing, we will develop if the committee is interested, we will be drafting a resolution of support that we could bring forward to the committee for their consideration.
Okay. Any questions? All right. One more thing I'll add to this topic. One interesting thing that, of course, is going to be going on for the next, I think it's July 1. It's supposed to be signed, so we're in the end of January. So essentially for the next 5 months, the legislature is, of course, going through the budget process right now. There are a number of things that can get proposed as part of that budget process that, of course, impact counties. During that time, at this committee, historically, staff will develop a list of items that potentially impact the work that we all do. We monitor them for the next 5 months or so, and then we can support certain initiatives that come up or speak against certain initiatives that come up as well. So you'll see more updates like this in the future. And I mean, even beyond the budget too, I mean, other legislation that can come up that the Environmental Resources Committee and the county, I should say, as a whole, might want to take a position with. So you'll see more of this over the course, especially the next 5 months, because of that state budget. Okay. Thank you, staff. 6A2, motion to go into closed session. Who wants to do it? Go ahead, Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Make a motion to go into closed session to pursue 19.85 for the purpose of conducting other specific public businesses within competitive or bargaining reasons required to close session. To wit, update relative to cost estimates for the Marathon Park Water Project.
Motion-
Roll call vote is
Suggested, right? Yep. All right. There's a second. Supervisor Drabeck with the second. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote. Nicole, if you want to call the roll, please.
Longenhan,
Aye.
Drabeck,
Aye.
Seefeld,
Aye.
Oberbach,
Aye.
Fensky,
Aye.
Sherfinsky,
I'm sorry. Aye.
Unger, Ritter,
Aye.
Roscoff.
Aye. We are in closed session. All right. So everybody, turn the mics off.